So myself and brother Paul were just in Sri Lanka at Christmas, and we were there last year as well in November. So in November we went back and we funded a children's home in Colombo, which was the first time we'd been back to Sri Lanka since the tsunami, and then most recently we went back this year to build our own kids campus. And that's just recently been opened. So 3 years ago is when myself and brother came up with the idea to create Gandy's. We'd spent many years thinking about what could we do, and feeling like we wanted to do something that we were passionate about and would ultimately kind of be a distraction to kind of the loss of our parents, but at the same time, something that would express the unique upbringing and the way of life that they taught us. So myself and brother Paul, along with our younger brothers and sisters, we were pulled out of school in London, and our parents took us around India, around the subcontinent, Asia, volunteering, working in projects, slums. We went to school out there. We'd be playing cricket one day on the beach. We'd be going to markets another, and we lived in flip-flops. So myself and brother wanted to do something that would encompass the unique upbringing our parents gave us, and could allow us to continue to travel, and the idea of flip-flops seemed to go with that, and we knew it was a sustainable way of funding children's homes. Most recently, the kids campus that we've built in Sri Lanka, the idea of it being is it's a preschool, and it helps children with general kind of medication, nutrition, and education, so that the children can hopefully get onto a good path, and like myself and brother, hopefully they'll be able to reach their dreams, whatever they may be. And then also in the evenings it's turning into a bit more of a community centre as well, where locals can learn English, additional classes, and older children as well can get extra tuition to hopefully help them as well with further education. Well, for us, working with the locals has been great. We've had local builders working on it, local people that are helping to run the project, and ultimately, the community that are there, they're the ones that are the ones that make the projects. It's what they require, it's what they need, it's not what we do. If anything, we like them to take as much responsibility as possible, because they need to kind of show that they're it's something that they want, and they're going to maintain and be passionate to make sure it works, because if they're not interested in it, it's not going to reach the potential it could, and for the children. So ultimately for us, we want to continue to grow Gandy's. We're expanding into new countries, potentially more products, more designs will be out there. And as we grow that, the idea being is the foundation and Orphans for Orphans will grow hand in hand, and we'll be able to deliver more projects.
But what happened on the morning of the 26th of December 2004 was a reminder of our vulnerabilities and our precarious place in this world. The images broadcast to the world of whole towns reduced to ruins and entire communities shattered and displaced in a matter of minutes was heartbreaking to see. Of course, it was an international catastrophe affecting many countries, but few were as hard hit as Sri Lanka, who lost over 35,000 people to the sea and was left with hundreds of thousands of homeless people. I too, like other speakers, remember where I was that day, because my husband and I were on holiday with our family in Egypt, when in the early hours of the morning he was woken with the news of what had happened, and with the question of what should be our response as Great Britain. And we had a personal reason as well, because a close friend of ours, Lord Attenborough, of course, as many of you know, lost two of his close family members on that day. As we've heard, many other British families who were seeking a wonderful holiday in Sri Lanka, which is, of course, the most beautiful of places, suddenly found their families torn apart by what happened. And those losses, which they will carry with them, can never truly heal. The first overwhelming feeling that such an event conjures is powerlessness. The scale of the onslaught and the extent of the devastation seem overwhelming, because what took minutes to destroy had been built up over decades, and to rebuild is a continuous process which, as we have heard, has still not finished even today. Homes destroyed, people being refugees in their own countries, families split up, livelihoods lost, children orphaned, widows made. Over the years, there will be new tragedies, new media stories to touch our hearts. But the victims of the tsunami will always remain in our prayers. Thankfully, we're also here to celebrate the human spirit and the great feats of compassion and endurance in the face of such arbitrary destruction. This was seen in the launching of the world's largest emergency aid program and the unprecedented stream of private donations from across the globes, including, of course, from this country. But the greatest and most poignant demonstration of human solidarity came from the people and the local communities directly affected. Our local Sri Lankan people, at the time when they were suffering a chaos in their own lives, took the time to help strangers from far-flung lands. Acts of nature like the tsunami are a great leveller, and the actions of those individual Sri Lankans should never be forgotten. And indeed, as we've heard tonight, many people who are the recipients of that kindness will never forget that and have acted accordingly. I believe that the best way to pay tribute to those who were loved and lost is never to forget that great solidarity that brought the world together 10 years ago.
As you know, there are about 60,000 tourists on the island at the time of the tsunami. 6,000 at least of those were British. And in many countries, the normal reply is, who's in charge of finding the tourists, repatriating the tourists? The normal reply is, well, we don't know. And in fact, many countries will say, we'll just treat the tourists like one of our own people. It sounds wonderful until you realize that your own people will be in reception centres for a number of months when actually the tourists want to go home tomorrow. And the local people are very happy to drink the local water, whereas the tourists would like to drink bottled water, and so on. There are differences. The Ministry of Tourism, the Sri Lankan National Tourism Authority, set up a command centre, and it set it its goal to actually remove all the tourists within 36 hours. In fact, it took them between 3 to 5 days to get them all out, but they achieved it. And it's the most extraordinary event, an extraordinary achievement that they did that. And they did it in such a way that everyone who was removed, yes, they had been affected by the tsunami, but they were also infected with something of an enthusiasm, something of a joy, something of a thanks to Sri Lanka for having looked after them so well. Many of the systems that Sri Lanka put into place, actually they learned during the conflict. During a time of terrorism and uncertainty, the tourism industry got together several times to make sure that they were able to react quickly if an area was no longer safe. And those same systems came into play. Amazing stories of buses being sent out to go and pick up tourists who weren't on the roadside to be picked up because they were being entertained in people's homes. So radio messages and radio advertisements were sent out over the media to tell the local people, will you please now bring out your tourists onto the road so we can pick them up by bus. The key thing that I think is so successful about the way that the tourists were treated is that many of them went home, wanted to go back again. as voluntourists. We've been hearing about it just now. As voluntourists, they want to come home to Sri Lanka and help rebuild. That is the best marketing you can have. In so many ministries of tourism around the world, they think the only thing they have to do is to let other people deal with the problem and go on marketing tourism for the next lot of people coming in. Sri Lanka showed a different model. We treat our tourists carefully. We make sure that they go home affected, yes, but infected with a love of Sri Lanka.